And as a business, you've got to think about who are the right people for your culture and own what that culture actually is and what it stands for and how it impacts people day to day.
You're busy, we know. We cut through the BS and give you straight talk advice whether you're a seasoned entrepreneur or just starting out. Our Small Business Big Insights podcast dives straight to the point on key topics and features interviews with industry experts and successful small business owners who share their deep insights. Tune in each month to gain new ideas and inspiration for your own small business. Welcome to the Small Business Big Insights podcast. So excited to share today this episode with some big insights from our very special guest, James Baker, who helps us better understand real insights into top recruiting, retention, and employee culture tactics for you in your small business. I invite you right now to subscribe to the podcast or you'll miss out on some upcoming episodes. Also, give us a review on the podcast platform of your choice to spread the message. Let us know how we're doing. So today, we've got James Baker. James is a CEO and co-founder of Keynote Search. He's got 20 years of experience in the industry. He's won a long list of awards with his innovative search firm. He's got the fastest growing companies from the Globe and Mail, best new business from the Ottawa Board of Trade, the fastest growing companies in the Ottawa Business Journal for 2018 and 19. And he's personally won the 40 Under 40 awards with the Ottawa Business Journal. He's also won the Immigrant of the Year in 2018. And he's been recognized by the Canadian Business Awards as Executive Search CEO of the Year in 2021. His biggest pride seems to be building and growing a firm that is respected in the industry. He's been leading various philanthropic initiatives like the 24-Hour Tremblant and the CHIO Foundation. James, I know you're a very in-demand speaker, moderator, host for industry conferences and webinars, and I'm very fortunate that you're joining us today. I know you've got loads of deep insight to share with our small business owners, so let's get right into it. What do you think that most small businesses are doing wrong in their hiring?
How long a list can I give you on this one? I'd say, Eric, it's there's a lot of things that small businesses either don't realize is available to them. Perhaps they limit their own expectations or ambitions when it comes. But for me, it often starts with overpaying for potential when you're actually doing your recruitment. So it's very easy as a small business owner to see the glamour and glitz of somebody that's maybe worked in a larger corporation that's done this really nice job that you think can translate. But oftentimes the realities of what they need to do for you don't translate exactly to their past experiences. So we often see somebody maybe paying a premium for some potential or even overestimating the impact that person might have on their business. And then you fast forward 6 months, 9 months, you're spending a little bit more money than you're comfortable with and you're not getting the result. And so oftentimes we find small businesses do that. Also, small businesses tend to fall in the trap where they don't define the expectations for that person they're hiring as well. So they create a little bit more ambiguity into what success is going to look like or how they're going to measure that success. So if I'm talking to you to bring you into my business, quite often small businesses get romanced by the idea of the candidate more so than providing the romance of the job to the candidate. So they end up being a little subservient to them. And ultimately, the candidate expectations is they can do more. What you actually need them to do sometimes gets missed.
Right.
We always see this translating as well into recruiting for what they needed in the past versus what they need in the future. I take an accounting example because of the space you're in.
Sure.
Historically, your business, a small business, might need bookkeeping services, but as the complexity grows, the size grows, you might need a controller. But you tend to still think of that person as your bookkeeper, and you tend to forget what you're going to have to offset or outsource or provide additional support for. And we do see small businesses struggle with that transition. It's like, well, I'm paying a bookkeeper X number of dollars a year. Why is my controller so expensive, and where's the added value? So it's some of those which are just realities being a small business. You're in your own bubble, your own space, and not realizing what opportunities. But there's some things that big corporates do every day that I see small business owners miss out on. There's a ton of government grants and programs. So if you hire tomorrow a new student, you can essentially get their first 3 months at a 50% discount.
Yeah. Wow.
These are employment Ontario programs, as an example. If you were to hire somebody who's new to Canada, there's offsets for their from a wage subsidy standpoint as well. There's training grants available to people, and
Mm-hmm.
small businesses often get overlooked for these programs, but are the biggest benefactor of them if they can leverage them. And so
Right.
there's employment services groups which, if you're going to be hiring somebody, you're making an investment in somebody, take advantage of some of the government money that's out there to actually kind of help you get up to speed.
Yeah.
Um, and outside of that, I would say the expectations is a big one, but it's also the fact that just because you're a small business doesn't mean that you don't have access to the best technology.
Mm-hmm.
You and I,
Yeah.
Eric,
No.
can go on LinkedIn tomorrow and start searching in the same way that a search firm does.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the time, the costs are scalable to a small business so that you can actually get onto LinkedIn Recruiter and find everybody that's open to a job right now in a matter of minutes.
Mm-hmm. And I like what you said about, you might like the candidate a lot, and you're kind of like just see that sure their salary is higher, so you expect them to do way more, right? And that might not always be the case, especially when you were saying like, a lot of the small businesses, they may not have a full job description that actually properly details what's expected from that
Yeah.
person, especially like as they're growing, as they're trying to get even more senior, more qualified people. That's kind of the stage where they may not even have those practices or those SOPs of like actually having a detailed guideline for that senior level person. And so I guess, do you primarily work with small businesses or is it kind of big businesses? Is that kind of the...
Yeah, we're lucky in that we get to work with the range.
Mm-hmm.
The way we describe it is we will help any organization with a business critical hire.
Mm.
But some of our smallest clients are, a handful of people, and they're adding, whether it's somebody to lead their sales group or whether we're working with, a professional sports team and we're helping them kind of drive their foundation forward. We get to work across.
Mm-hmm.
But those small businesses, there is I guess, a misnomer out there that they don't have access to the best technology.
Right.
I would say that is no longer the case. If
Mm-hmm.
you look at the technology we use in order to map talent, map competing organizations, identify people who work there, all of those are done by free to access tools that exist. So whether these are AI tools, whether these are recruiter light tools on LinkedIn,
Right.
whether these are mining professional databases to find every CPA that qualified in the last 5 years,
Mm-hmm.
that technology is being kind of essentially democratized. And so everyone now has access to it, which
Right.
is really helping when you're looking for kind of that key person that might move your organization forward.
Okay. And I guess for a lot of like the smaller businesses, I think it doesn't come down to like, the technology used in the recruiting, but kind of like what does the small business offer that the big businesses don't, right? And I think that it can be I guess like a big hurdle for some small business owners to think like, how do I actually recruit these people that are used to all of these health benefits and retirement packages to come and work for my small business that's maybe 5 or 6 employees, right? So how do you motivate good talent to join small companies?
If you were to give me a choice of two organizations to work with, I would always pick the small company as the one to market because I think it's easier than marketing a large corporation. And I'll explain why.
Interesting.
If
Yeah.
I'm a large corp, you can go and find out everything about my business online and build your own opinion without ever having spoken to me. You can look at my Glassdoor reviews, my Google reviews. You can read what somebody's getting paid in each and every job. So there's no secrets in
Mm-hmm.
a large corporation. So the narrative has already been created.
Hmm.
So large corps have to deal with that pre-existing opinion of them in the market. Small
Right.
private company, anything you tell me, Eric, about your business is the narrative we are creating for that role. So you get to control that.
Right. You kind of have
And
that
as
blank
long as
slate. Yeah.
Exactly. And so, if I'm recruiting for a small company, I know that they're going to have more impact. I'm going to be able to
Mm.
talk a little bit more about the work they do and how that changes or influences people around them, what their actual outcomes are. It's for me that influence, the dream, the journey. I'm yet to meet somebody who doesn't want their work to be meaningful. And
Right.
so in a small business, I think you can connect meaning to the task a lot easier than you can in a large corporation,
Yeah.
and you don't have pre-existing narrative to deal with.
Yeah. And I think that like there's a growing, I guess, need for people to have meaning in their work, right? I think historically, through the Industrial Revolution. Like it was kind of like you just get a job, you're happy, you go back home, you
Hmm.
know, with your kids. Now it's kind of like I want to enjoy what I do. I want to have an impact with what I do. So, and yeah, small businesses are more likely to have that impact than in some sort of like big conglomerate. So,
Yeah.
so that's really interesting. And I guess like, would you say that I guess the employee culture in small businesses is typically better, or like what are these small business owners doing in their employee culture that's not so great?
Um, I think the thing that we see and that we experience is culture of organizations evolves over time.
Mm-hmm.
And small businesses, particularly, are the ones that fall victim to where they get stuck in what their culture used to be and not what it's becoming. For me, I treat it like a living being culture. It's something that is going to change and adapt as your business evolves. The types of customers you work with may change over time, which means the way you communicate with your audiences may change. The type of people you hire may have to change. So it
Mm-hmm.
has to be something that is constantly being added to. Um, and I always look at this with hiring as well. I never try to hire for somebody that's fitting with my current culture. I'm hiring for somebody that's going to build on my current culture. They have to bring
Interesting.
something
Wow.
new that's going to evolve it. And that's where the diversity of thought, ideas, backgrounds, experiences is so magical because it allows you to evolve culture. Um, but also we see, companies that do some things really, really well, they also fall into the trap when they get busy. They let some of the old habits just die off. If you used to be a company that did, I don't know, work from home Fridays and, maybe did pizza Wednesdays, or you had a quiz night on a Tuesday and everyone got together, when those things start to drop off. And so you have legacy employees who start to feel a disconnect because the business is changing and you're not actively managing their experience of the culture.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it happens a lot. I will say business owners have a huge amount of pressure on them with everything that's going on economically, societally right now. But you have to own your culture and you have to say, what am I doing to improve it, to build on it, to foster it, and to protect it for the people that I'm going to attract in the future and the people that are already working in my organization today.
Mm-hmm. And I guess like obviously like the good employee culture helps with the retention of employees and not just kind of new employees coming in. But I guess is that the number one, I guess, issue that small business owners have around retention? Like what do you think is the biggest issue that small business owners have around retention of employees, and how can that be fixed?
The first thing is to be aware of what your culture is and your values are.
Mm,
I actually don't think there's such a thing as a bad culture. I think there's the wrong
interesting.
culture for people.
Right. Oh, okay.
So, I'll give you an example. I know companies out there that run 12-hour work days. They pay low income wages compared to their industry, provide
Mm-hmm.
the best training programs on the planet for a certain industry specialization.
Right.
Every person who goes there within 2 years goes on to work in a very lucrative field. And that
Yeah.
company owns the fact that they're a training ground for others.
Right.
So they're very aware of this. They don't pretend to be something else. They're very genuine with it. And I think that's the mistake on the small business side is you try to pretend to be something to accommodate the needs of somebody else. It's okay to have a culture that could be, we close our doors, everyone works in silence and everyone gets the job done and checks out at 4:30 and no one interacts. If I'm an
Mm-hmm.
introvert, as an example, what a wonderful place to work for me where I'm not going to get interrupted by that extroverted colleague that's
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
telling me about the bachelorette last night. So I I think the mistake is we always say, oh, that company's got a really bad culture. No, it was
Mm,
just the wrong culture for you. And as a
interesting.
business, you've got to think about who are the right people for your culture and own what that culture actually is and what it stands for and how it impacts people day to day.
Hmm. Wow, that's pretty deep. I like it. And I guess like on the topic of some people that just want to be on their own or whatnot, what's your stance personally on remote work, right? Like as you know, like our whole team is completely remote, but not every person wants that. Not every company agrees with that. But what's your stance, and do you think that some companies are going to stay 100% remote now?
So, what I will tell you, I've got my own personal opinion, and there's also what the data is showing. So,
Yeah.
the data is showing that our labor force is the least productive it's been in our lifetimes. So labor productivity has crashed. The one fundamental shift we've seen during that period of time is working from home. So there is a correlation between working from home and labor productivity. And small businesses in particular have to be very careful around labor productivity because cost of labor continues to increase, cost of goods and services going up. So we need to maximize the value our employees can provide for us. So I think those businesses that were built to be work from home remote businesses can and will continue to thrive. And we know about a third of people in the workforce want fully remote work. So there will be companies out there that can say, you know what, we built it this way. It works for us. We've invested in the right tools and technologies to support the employee experience. But also the people who work for us understand we're a remote business, and that is what they need and what they work best in. Mm-hmm. What we're seeing is about 2/3 of the workforce that are prepared to go to the office at least some of the time.
Yeah,
and I think companies are looking at ways that they can really get people connected to the culture, to the business, to the leadership, particularly from a training and development standpoint, which is easier done in proximity to others. So hybrid will become the compromise. But I'm a big believer, the same way that, you know, culture, you have to control and own it and be nice. If your business is going to be best served having people 5 days a week, be okay with the fact that that's not going to work for a third of the people you employ, and find others that it is going to work for. I know I need to be in an office to be the most productive version of myself. If that's not right for you, I'm happy to help you find something that's going to fit with your needs, but you've got to be honest about it. I will tell you, anecdotally, we are not seeing any fully remote roles being marketed anymore through us as a search firm. Most people are coming to us are asking for people to be in the office most or all of the time with most searches. If they're not, they're asking that they're in close proximity to the office so they can bring people together for team building exercises. So most large corporates in particular are looking at a return to office the majority of the time.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, I can tell you from our own experience too, that, you know, we've had no issue in hiring, as in we put a job posting, and when we say it's 100% remote, we get so many applicants that we get applicants across the country. We actually put postings in cities that have high unemployment rate, and then we get loads of applicants. So in essence, I wonder if there's a selection bias where, you know, they're not going to a search firm because they're getting loads of leads already, right? But I guess it's interesting what you're saying. It's a third of the people that actually want that, and really 2/3 don't want that, right? And what we've seen is that before the pandemic, people who wanted to work for us said, yeah, I want to work from home. And then they start working with us, and then they realize, you know what? I don't know if I like this, you know? And then they have to leave, you know? And then, But what happened for us is that through the pandemic, people kind of self-selected whether they actually like to work from home or not. So now the only people that do apply are the ones that did enjoy working from home and who wants to do that on an ongoing basis. So I thought that was a pretty interesting change in the industry. Yeah.
And most people are getting to grips with it now. I mean, we're 3 years out now from this kind of movement and shift. You know, I'm really intrigued though as to how employers who need people in the place of work more consistently. You know, we're seeing 4-day work weeks become more popular now, where they say you can work 4 days a week, but you'll do it from the office. What I do find intriguing though is that companies have stopped kind of clock watching. So they'll say, come to the office, but if you're coming at 9, whether you come in at 10, it doesn't really matter. So there's far greater flexibility on how to manage life around in office, which I know I've got a young family. It's great for us that I can put the kids on the bus and not worry about being tied to my desk by 8 a.m. because my boss thinks I need to be there at that time.
This episode of Small Business Big Insights is brought to you by Zenbooks. Zenbooks is a reimagined, full-service online accounting experience. I work at Zenbooks, and we bring a fresh, unique, and modern approach to a very old-fashioned industry. We've been working remotely well before it was cool. And we're a team of advisors, accountants, and payroll professionals that provide ongoing, impactful insights to small business owners and key decision makers. That means that we get into the nitty-gritty of weekly calls with ongoing reporting, bookkeeping, payroll, tax filings, and tax planning. Even if you already have an accountant or a bookkeeper, or you have some accounting staff on your team, you should talk to Zenbooks about the tools and expertise that they have to offer. Check out Zenbooks at zenbooks.ca. Now let's get back to the episode. Okay. Well, I've got a couple more kind of like, I guess, more pointed questions I could get into here. So, one thing around hiring is about trying to get the best talent you can, right, for your own team, and part of that is kind of like poaching employees from competitors, right? And so I kind of want to get your opinion on that. Like, is that something that people should be doing, like actively trying to search out the best candidates from your competitors to kind of get them, or like what's been your experience in there?
So I'm heavily biased on this because I'm a headhunter. So I actually get paid purely to compel people to leave other organizations. So it's maybe
That's
not
true.
a fair
Yeah.
question. What I will say is if we look at the unemployment rate in Canada, 5, 6, 7%, depending which part of Canada you're in, means
Mm,
that 90 odd percent of people are employed. So your ability to access talent needs to be across the spectrum of everybody. If I'm a
right.
small business owner, I believe that you need to maximize the value of the investment you're going to make. And the person who's most likely to be successful is someone that's got experience in that environment, that type of industry, that type of sector, because they're going to get up to a productivity quicker. So I think for some roles, you should most certainly have a desire or at least an interest to explore people that are performing similar roles for your competitors. I think there's other instances where you can develop talent, where you can look at finding people perhaps who wouldn't otherwise have the opportunity, and you can take on the responsibility of developing their careers. But for at least 20 or 30% of the hiring you do, almost certainly they need to be cherry picked from competing or at least complementary organizations, in my opinion.
Right. Okay. And I know like recently there was some conversations that came out between Steve Jobs and Adobe where they agreed to not poach from each other,
Yeah.
right? To not go and like hire from each other's groups. I had a lot of questions on that. Like, is that even legal? Like, is there, there was some controversy around how there's basically lack of competition then because people can't get the highest salary or benefits and all of that. So, what are your thoughts about agreements with certain competitors on not poaching from each other? Like, is there a legality issue there or?
There is now, fortunately. So there never used
Okay.
to be. There used to be handshake agreements everywhere that said, hey, I won't take your people if you don't take mine. Also,
Yeah.
wage fixing was an issue as well, where people would actually
Mm,
say, well, what are you paying your developers? I won't pay them anymore so that we'll level the market out. So as of June 23rd, I think it was, in Canada, it became a criminal offense for two employers to fix, maintain, or control wages in any format. Also, that applied to any agreements that prevented companies from hiring or soliciting other employees. So
hmm.
even for us, we used to have what we called no hit lists for our clients. They would say, hey, you
Yeah.
can't take from this company, this company, this company. We now can no longer do that. We must provide equal opportunity for anyone to apply for or be considered for a role. So it's employee centric legislation.
Yeah.
But it's a big change to the I think it's not sure if it's employment standards where it's the agreement, but that new legislation came into play this June and
Wow.
is
Okay.
already changing some of those rules and regulations around it.
Yeah, it's interesting because yeah, like the price fixing is not just about your sale price; it can also be around your costs, and it can be around
Yeah.
salaries. Yeah, so that's it's an interesting
If
new
you all
development.
agree in your industry, a new CPA, newly minted CPA gets X dollars,
Yeah,
where's the opportunity for the employee there? So yeah, I'm not suggesting just the big four accounting firms do this, but there are a lot of organizations out there that it was in their interest to control spend in certain areas.
yeah, yeah. No, I get that, and I guess like your team helps fill companies with good talent, right? Like,
Yep.
and I'm sure you have situations where an employer is just not a good employer. Like maybe the stuff they do is just unethical, or is they're bad products, or they don't have good, or they don't honor their warranties or whatever. And you're being asked to actually fill those roles, right? Like, so how do you do that? Like, do you end up basically like lying to the prospective employee in order to get the top talent? Like, how does that usually play out?
So, I mean, we have the luxury as a business to also pick our customers. So, the first rule, if there's
Right.
somebody that is, bordering on criminality, we're obviously going to say thank you very much for your interest, but we encourage you to go to our direct competitor. So we'll do that if we need to. However, if we've got a company that perhaps is had historically some challenges, is on the path to correction. Maybe they've had some high turnover issues. Maybe they had some leadership changes. Just because a company's had some problems in the past doesn't mean it's going to be a bad company in the future. And I will tell you, I've made enough mistakes building my company to write a book on if I needed to. I would hate it if every mistake I made is how people judge whether they wanted to come work for us or not. I would hope that they
Right.
would consider the future. What I will always say is we always believe in the good, the bad, and the ugly with every organization. So as a recruiter, as a company that's hiring, whether you're introducing a friend, a colleague, a loved one to another organization, I believe it's your duty of care to actually provide them with insights on what's good about the organization, what's bad about the organization, and real challenges
Mm.
that they may actually face taking this on.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you see our marketing, we always have what challenges will you face, why this might be right for you, why you should consider this. People are going to make a choice. I can tell you right now, there is no perfect company, there's no perfect job, and there's no perfect employee. So we're all going to accept imperfection. It's our job to provide perspective on that so you can make an objective, informed choice whether or not to consider it. Unfortunately, in today's day and age, I always say to candidates looking at jobs, I say, you go do your references on the employer. Go speak to other people that have worked there or currently working there, because they're going to go do references on you. So everybody can get a little bit of perspective that they can use to balance their own impressions of an opportunity as well.
Interesting. Yeah. And I guess like I've heard just from my own contacts on how, maybe it's only the companies who can't keep people who have, retention issues that use expensive recruiters like yourself, that have to use the best in the industry in order to actually keep getting people. And so what would you say to people who think that?
Well, you need to make some better friends then, or clients, if that's the case, guys. I mean, recruitment's a $750 billion industry around the world. Okay, North America employs, I think it's about 200,000 people who work in recruitment in North America. There's a lot of businesses that
Hmm.
rely on recruitment. Um, you may need, at certain times in your journey as an organization, you're going to need to add people to your business that are going to be hard to attract. They're going to be hard to obtain. They're going to be, maybe there's confidentiality and sensitivity to it. I believe that 80% of the time you should never need to use a recruiter. But
80% of the time. Wow.
I think you can yourself as an organization, 80% of the time, find ways to attract and engage talent using technology, using networks, using kind of putting together kind of cohorts of people that you think you might need in the future. You can do work proactively, I think 80% of the time. Maybe you can hire an HR person on staff to help with it. But the 20% of the time, you're going to get a job that's so critical to your success or impactful to your customer experience or to your ability to execute, that making the investment in finding the very best the market can provide becomes crucial, right? Give an example. If you came to me tomorrow and said, James, I need a head of tax, I'm going to go off and look at 200 people, interview 50. I'm going to then get right through deep dive screening from 50 down to 15 and then down to 5 to the one you ultimately hire,
Mm-hmm.
putting in upwards of 150, 200 hours of time into ensuring that you've got the best candidate the market can provide. Now, if your customers, your current employees and your future customers aren't worth the investment to find the best that market can provide, then I would question where your business is going. Same way, I want to use a lawyer because I know there's an investment in making sure my contracts are tight and employment agreements up to date.
Yeah.
There's a time to invest in professional services, in which I include recruitment in that. But it should be, in my opinion, like 1 in 5 is probably worthy of the investment, and it's when you can't afford to get it wrong.
Right. Yeah, I like it. It's a little bit kind of like an insurance policy in a way that,
Mm-hmm.
you pay the fee and sometimes, it works out, sometimes it doesn't, but it ensures that it will be a good candidate or it
Mm-hmm.
increases the chances anyway,
Yeah.
considerably. So yeah, no, I like that. Um, and I guess more on the broader sense of the industry and trends, what are you seeing in the marketplace in 2023 right now? Where are things kind of shaping up?
Yeah, I think what's fascinating me the most right now is we're seeing a shift from the war for talent, something that's been talked about a lot over the course of the last couple of years. There's more job postings than there are job seekers. Companies are struggling to hire. People are expensive. We're starting to see that change fairly rapidly as we continue to see immigration accelerate here in Canada, and we welcome new Canadians. We're also seeing a lot of larger corporations start to make those cuts and those kind of reductions in headcount. We're starting to see the place where employers can actually hire for less money than they were paying a year previously for the same role.
Wow.
Because there's more supply. So if a role that might have cost you $80,000 a year ago, you might be able to hire somebody for $70,000. And you're also likely to get a little bit more experience and expertise of that investment as well. So what this is doing is creating a heightened focus on productivity of your employees, the performance of your employees.
Right.
If I had to hire during the pandemic, I can promise you, I probably paid 10 to 15% more than I should have done for that resource relative to the market. Now, in theory, I can get that 10 to 15% back. So companies are starting to put more focus on performance of people to see if the value is there. So we're already seeing, maybe it was that remote employee and everybody else is in office that's now at risk, who perhaps they can replace with someone back in the physical place of work. So employers are getting a little bit more control. Employers are getting a little bit more influence. I do worry about this because employers, small businesses in particular, I think it's been unfairly impacted, I think, relative to other corporations during the pandemic and kind of post-pandemic. We're not going to get into a conversation about how small business owners are taxed now and how they've taken away every advantage of being a business owner.
That's another episode. Yeah.
That's you bring in somebody else, I'll probably get in trouble. But the reality is small businesses have been squeezed. So now, we don't want to see people taken advantage of or employees mistreated or perhaps unfairly treated. But there's a lot of questions about performance, a lot of questions about productivity relative to the costs that we're paying for people. So we expect to see a bit of a shuffle now where there's going to be a portion of the workforce that's going to be released for new opportunities as employers look for ways to kind of perhaps control some of their costs on labor.
Okay. And so I guess, is that the best way to kind of like mitigate those maybe errors that happen in 2020, 2021, 2022 is to actually do more performance, conversations or performance assessments to kind of see, cut through some of the overpriced salaries? Like, is that kind of the best way for small business owners to mitigate those risks?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's going to be a risk of turnover regardless over the course of the next couple of years for every business, because people made choices to join organizations under immense pressure, under certain circumstances. Those work circumstances may change. If I took a job in the federal government in the last 3 years, my conditions of work are going to change in the next 3 years as I'm asked to go back to a physical place of work. So there is inherent risk in the labor force right now. You just have to accept that. What's important, I think, for businesses is to really get into the details of what is the expectations of everybody in my team. What do I define as success for their role? What are some of the performance measures we can put in place? Am I sitting down with them at least quarterly to update them? And am I being honest in feedback to them? I'm a big believer that it's okay if your business outgrows somebody or somebody outgrows you. But there's a responsibility as the employer in that to always be honest and open with somebody. And if somebody outgrows my business, it's my responsibility to help them find somewhere new to go where they can continue their development. Right. And conversely, if my business is going into a place where they no longer can provide the same value, perhaps I can actually help them secure something else which is more aligned with their skills and experience. So it's just a care for your employees, I think, is what small businesses in particular need to demonstrate over the next couple of years.
Yeah. And I completely agree with you, especially on like the alumni side, right? Like as they leave, like take care of them as they go to their next transition, because the industries are so tight, and you never know if they're going to come back, if their family members are going to come back, if they're going to speak negatively about you or whatever it is. You want to have like a good employer reputation. And so, I like that. That's cool. And I guess, we've talked a little bit about the industry and all of that, but I'd like to talk about you. So the recruiting industry is incredibly competitive, right? There's a lot of recruiters out there. It's very cutthroat. It can be emotionally draining as an industry. And the turnover for a recruiter is very high. So what have you done differently? And how are you not impacted by this?
I think it's the first thing to understand about the recruitment industry is it's got a very low barrier to entry, and the
Hmm.
allure of the recruitment industry is great. What do we do for a living? We talk to people all day. Okay, well, that sounds like fun. I could do that. You get paid, the average recruiter in North America earns $90,000 a year. So it's a very well paid job without any professional qualifications or designations required to perform the
Hmm.
task. So naturally, when you've got a role where you can earn good money and sounds relatively simplistic from an external perspective, you're going to get a high degree of new entrants into the space. The reality is the failure rate in recruitment, our turnover rate as an industry is about 20 to 25% annually, of
Okay.
which I think 80% of those happen within the first year.
Okay. Wow.
So it is the complexity of the work, the pressures of the work, which you alluded to, the need to earn people's trust, keep people's trust, secure trust from other competitors and win that business, all while trying to identify whether or not you will be a good candidate for an organization, makes it a little bit tricky. For us, I mean, I have the benefit of 20 years of experience doing this, and I've got a team which collectively has 200 or 300 years worth of experience. But for me, the biggest mindset shift when we started Keynote Group and the businesses we started subsequently, Keynote Search and Links, is that our job is not just to place people. I'm yet to meet an employer that's looking for me to make a placement. Every single one of them wants me to find them a successful employee. And so we started the business using the adage of, well, our job is to not only find people, but make sure they fit, but also make sure they stay. And so we look at the journey beyond start date into those kind of first 3 months of employment, and actually talk about integration, communication, alignment, goal setting, success as part of our delivery of process to our customers. And that's something that's allowed us to maybe take a different message to the market and perhaps set ourselves apart from
Hmm.
some very successful firms who are focused on the transaction of recruitment rather than the employee journey.
Right. And I mean, in another way, like I would say that, the fact that there is such high turnover in the recruiting industry and that it's so competitive and draining and that a lot of people leave in the first year is an indicator of how difficult it is for small business owners to try and do recruiting themselves, right? So that's another reason why, someone might want to choose to outsource that to a company, because it can be draining for small business owners. It's draining for anyone. And so if they were to kind of find a firm like yours or whoever, like what's the fee structure typically?
Yeah, I mean, there's a few different kind of layers to it, but most firms, well, we would call ourselves a retained search firm. So we work on kind of that management level up to the executive. And the fee is normally a percentage of the first year cash compensation. If you're
Okay.
hiring a junior member of the team, administrative support, your fees may be as low as 10, 15%. If you're hiring a CEO, the fees range from 25 to 30% of compensation. So there's a scale. But you should expect that, as I say, is 20% of the roles you hire a year likely could be filled by a recruiter. If you're
Right.
doing more than that, I would suggest that you look at some of these fractional recruiters that exist who charge by the hour, so that
Mm,
you can almost have like a part-time recruiter on your team. It will work
mm,
out far more cost effectively. And that's worked really well for small businesses that perhaps have manual labor considerations where they're looking for a more flexible workforce, maybe drivers, logistics, supply chain, warehousing. We see a lot of success for those types of small businesses when they've got a fractional or part-time recruiter that can work on their team, and that reduces the costs of coming to somebody like myself as an example.
okay. Yeah, no, that's good. And I guess like when you say, 10, 15 to, 25%, and when it goes up to 25% for the most expensive
Senior.
salaries anyway, like then it gets really kind of expensive, right? Like, and I like that you're saying really it's not, for us small business owners, like we're not looking at our total salary costs versus like 10, 15 or 25%. It's really what's your turnover. And then also only for about 20% or the key roles that are really important that then you actually need to fork over the money for a good investment in your staffing. So no, that's
Yeah.
interesting. And I
I mean,
guess for you,
sorry.
like personally, oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, I mean, it's one of those ones where if you're going to bring in somebody, and perhaps they're a slightly more senior member of the team, they're going to create tangible value to your business. So that investment, again, you can amortize that cost over a period of time. So on average, the people we place, 90% of those people are still working in the business after 3 years.
Wow.
So if I
Yeah, that's
know I'm
huge.
coming to
Wow.
you with a massive probability of success over the course of 3 years. Even if you're investing $25,000 over 3 years, that's a relatively nominal investment for somebody that's going to generate or contribute to your organization's success. Everything for me always comes down to math. Is that investment going to be worth it long term for your business? Do you keep other key employees, keep customers because of it? And if it becomes that critical or higher, there's no cost to ask questions of people like me. The cost comes if you decide to engage in the service. So pick our brains. We interview 8,000 to 10,000 people a year. So we normally have a pretty good sense of what people are up to and where the market's going as well.
Yeah. That's a lot of people. That's good. That's a lot of experience. And thanks for sharing all this today.
Whole other conversation.
Yeah. And I guess for you, like personally, what's kind of next for you? What's the next big challenge? You know, you've kind of grown a company now. You've got links as well, the side business, and so like what's your next challenge? What's next for you?
Yeah, I think we've got to figure out is how big we want to become as a business. Like, where do we find the joy in what we do? I think when we started this, you have dreams of grandeur to take over the world and become, this massive business. But then, what's really become apparent to me kind of through everything, both personally and professionally, is how much I enjoy the work we do with certain types of organizations. So we have to add scale, but we have to scale in a way that is going to be controllable for our own client experience that we have with the customers we work with, but also for them to make sure we don't move away from our values. So I think it will be a little bit of geographic expansion, and then maybe a little bit of sectorial expansion to maybe work in a few different markets that we're not in. But I think for us, it's getting bigger than a boutique, but not into a kind of large corporate where I no longer know the names of my employees' kids and what their activities are. I like that. I like being a small business owner. I think the work we do is reflected in the values we have, and I would hate to lose that because we become too big.
Yeah. No, I agree. The whole kind of boutique feel where you get to know everybody is way more fun, honestly, just as a day-to-day than to be in some big conglomerate company. So no, that's cool. I appreciate that. And I guess like, I know we're running out of time here, but like is there anything that you feel like we missed that we should have talked about, or that our listeners should know more about?
Yeah, the one thing I'll say, so we talk about everything around the employee experience. I mean, people are the most important asset to just almost every business we deal with. It's got to be something you commit time to investing in, paying attention to it, investing into experiences for your people, protecting your culture. It's okay to make investments into the talent when you need to. If you're having challenges, be comfortable enough to go out there and ask for help with it, because your business will succeed or fail because of the people you have working there. It's as simple as that. And I think we do a very good job as small business owners in paying attention to the legal side, the accounting side, to the systems. We don't ever kind of put that time in our calendar to say, this is my people time. This is time I'm spending on my most important assets, which is the human capital that I employ.
Interesting. Wow, amazing. And I guess, James, how do we get in touch with you? If people want to kind of get a hold of you, do they check out the website? Is there an email or Twitter account? I don't know. Yeah. How do they reach you?
Yes. So I'm all over LinkedIn, as you can imagine. So James Baker at Keynote Group on there. My email is james@keynotesearch.com. And if you manage to find me on Twitter, let me know, because I'm not sure I've updated that in a long time.
All right. Thanks so much, James. Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you so much for your time today. This has been an amazing episode.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
This episode is brought to you in part by Humani HR. At Humani HR, they provide both fractional HR support and consulting services to small and medium-sized businesses of all industries. Your dedicated, seasoned HR professional provides custom HR support on demand and scales with your needs. They're more than just a strategic advisor. They actually do the work, so you can focus on building your business. Visit their website at humanihr.com to have a free consultation and find out more about their services. That's humanihr.com. You'll also find the link in our show notes. I'm excited to announce that on our next episode, we've got Riaz Sidi, who chats with us about some tactical marketing advice and some strategic and unexpected marketing ideas for your small business. So follow us on your podcast provider to get notified of that episode and more. Don't forget to rate and review this episode. Thanks.